Hello, adventurers. My name's Tyler.
And I'm Richard.
On today's episode, we're discussing Hasbro selling off Dungeons and Dragons. Welcome to True Strike.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to the show.
Howdy.
Hasbro is back in the news again this week, and we want to talk about it.
Do we want to talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, it's every week something new is happening. Is it good? Not necessarily. It's been pretty up and down. We're back to a new news cycle and some new crazy Hasbro news that caused like shockwaves of panic. Like almost immediately. I don't know how much you saw about this, like when you first saw it happen or anything like that. Did you see it and then immediately hear that it was bad or that it was wrong? Or did you see like any of like the YouTubers like knee-jerk videos trying to get ahead of the story?
So I didn't see, I've unfollowed a lot of those kind of influencers.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't see a lot of that. Mostly the articles talking about the speculation, stuff like that, and the possibility of it happening and stuff, but nothing of like, the world's on fire, Hasbro's done for, D&D is gone. No, none of that.
Yeah, so I still follow a couple of people.
Yeah.
And I do actually have my Twitter account, which I did never clean up once it, went to X. So there's still people that are on there that I see posts from. And if you're unfamiliar, this is the story that Hasbro was selling off Dungeons and Dragons as an IP. So specifically
to Tencent.
To Tencent, which is a huge organization. And almost immediately, the normal cycle happened, which was there are specific YouTubers that this is their bread and butter. Like this right here, they woke up and like they like jumped out of bed and they were doing that whole Lego scene that everything is awesome because they knew that they were getting paychecks rolling in. And I watched a couple of those videos and they were like, yeah, they were all over it. Like, this is the end. This shows us what Hasbro is doing with Dungeons and Dragons, and it's gone, and they're selling it, and they're cashing out, and all this stuff. And yeah, I saw, I think, no less than 3 videos, one of which was like 45 minutes long. That was all like, this is it. This is what I've been saying is going to happen, and I predicted the future, and this is happening right now and today. And then, actually, to that YouTuber's credit, I'm not going to name any names here, did come back and make another video, a follow-up video, and was all like, oops, my bad.
Good on them.
Yeah, my mistake.
That's
important. I have to walk that back. I screwed up and jumped the gun on this. I wanted to get ahead of the game, and I didn't. So, yeah.
And to be fair, if your livelihood and your big paychecks, like to keep the lights on and the family fed and stuff like that is, trying to break out ahead of these news cycles. It sucks, but if that is your job, that's what you got to do, I guess.
And this is one of those stories that did legitimately seem real because of the fact that the names that were being tossed around.
Yeah.
Tencent is a huge company.
Also, even with this supposedly being cleared, who's to say they're not looking to sell?
Yeah, and
Smoke
that's the
and
thing.
Fire and all that.
Yeah, so all this happened, and it was, turned out to not be true. That's, as far as we know, this whole thing is, it's not happening. We're not interested in Tencent buying it. They've been very careful with their wording on how they posted things, as specifically saying they didn't really deny shopping around or, like outright say like, we are not selling Dungeons and Dragons as an IP.
I mean, and then do you want to so originally the thing that came through was the whole reason that it got to Tencent in the first place is that supposedly Hasbro was looking to offload Dungeons and Dragons to Larian.
Yeah.
Larian Studios because of the success of Baldur's Gate 3. And then since Tencent has a, partial stake in their studio, they were like, hey, we're not in the market right now to be purchasing a franchise, an IP like this. But you know who might be? A company with a lot more money than us.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, you want to take a look? And, Tencent was maybe interested, but, like we've already discussed, supposedly that was just speculation.
Yeah.
So.
But it did sound believable.
I could see it still.
Yeah.
Even with them.
And I can see it happening. I do wonder what it would actually take, like as far as money-wise is considered. because, you know, we've talked about it in the past as far as like Dungeons and Dragons resurgence and where it's at right now as an IP. And it's definitely bigger, and it has had a couple of slips like
Yeah.
here and there, but overall this is pretty big though.
And you're
right?
talking about the 50th anniversary. This is the year you'd want to maybe keep it, or maybe it's the year to sell it.
Maybe
I
it's
don't
the
know.
year to sell it. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's a really good question there. And it seems weird though that they would be interested in selling it right now with so many things on the horizon too. You know, with the VTT up and coming and stuff like that, you'd think they would want to see that through before a sale. Or is it not so much a focus anymore, and they're just trying to get it out from under themselves?
That's exactly where, I guess it depends. You know, we've already seen Hasbro cutting off parts of the body to try to, you know, make a little money, but save money on
But save
staffing.
money, yeah.
And I mean, between the staff layoffs recently and them getting rid of the film division, the idea that maybe they were like, okay, look, this is how much money we're projecting to make from Dungeons & Dragons in the year of 2024 and beyond. But how much will we save by not having all that staff, and how much will we make from this initial sale? And it's hey, what better time to sell it than when you're like, hey, Tencent, potential purchaser. Well, this is the 50th anniversary. You're going to make this money. We've got a VTT in development. You've got all these positive things. Take a look, because it's not a stagnant property. Look at all this growth that's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's don't look at how much money we made last year. Look at how much money
you're going to make.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know. That's actually a really good point, because it is it would be, I think, better to sell an IP that hasn't gone stagnant. So yeah, maybe you're onto something there as far as like, this is a good time to try and shop around to see if anybody would be interested in it. It is interesting that they have, been trimming fat, and they have sold off a lot of things. Like I recently just read that they sold off the studio that did the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, that was probably part of the film and stuff. What was the name of it? Lion something, or Sold Two Lions Gate or something like that. I'm mixing up wires. Either way, they sold that off, and then because of that, the Dragonlance secret project of Joe, was it Manganiello?
I've always said Manganiello, but it's not. It's how do you say it now?
Oh, I'm saying Manganiello.
Manganiello.
Right.
Joe Manganiello.
I believe that is correct.
Yes.
So, secret project, Dragonlance, would have been kind of cool. But I guess between the book not selling as hot as they were hoping for, and the, the film stuff already being sold off, they were like, can it? There were some rumors that the pilot had already been filmed, but I guess that's also come out as no, it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, because I would, just like with Cavill in The Witcher, and then I had Cavill with the 40K stuff, it's cool when you have a very nerdy celebrity who genuinely cares about a project, a passion project.
Who actually likes the IP.
Yes.
Right.
Who's, spearheading this endeavor, and to have him on these projects for Dungeons and Dragons is awesome. It's sick. And I want to see more of it. I want to see some of it, but we're not getting any of it, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem like we're going to get any of it, which is, sad, because it is a really cool section of the IP too. I got to break the news to my daughter, because she just started reading the Dragonlance series.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and then when I told her, I was like, that's going to be like a thing you can actually watch too. Like, so once you really get through these books, you're going to be able to watch like the on-screen adaptation of it. No, it's not happening. Yeah, which is interesting, because she started reading those books before she knew that it was in continuity,
right?
Like that it was part of the the Dungeons and Dragons universe. Like she had no idea. Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
No,
That's
she
sick.
picked up the books because she likes the subject material. She likes high fantasy. She likes dragons. She likes all that stuff. Political intrigue and all that good fun shit.
Dragons.
And then
Lances.
she likes that stuff. Yeah, and she picked it up, started reading it, and then I saw her reading one of the books, and I was all like, "You reading Dungeons and Dragons books?" She's all like, "No, it's about dragons," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's Dragonlance. Dragonlance. Remember the game I just bought that's based on this?" I had to explain to her that it was, all Dungeons and Dragons. So
Nice.
yeah, then she was even more interested in it.
Of course.
Because more aligns with her interest. She's like, "Oh, this is great.
Yeah.
This is even better." And now, we're not going to see it, which is kind of sad, because it is a really cool storyline. I haven't read all the books. I've read like 2. And they are very entertaining. And I think they could do really well on a screen adaptation.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm interested to see if something like this project gets picked up later down the line. Obviously, it's canceled now,
Yeah.
but I could see a studio wanting to pull this off, especially with already a celebrity tied to it so intrinsically. I mean,
Mhm.
look at Deadpool,
Yeah.
and like that was kicked down the road a little bit until that was forced into reality.
Yes. Yeah. I also kind of wonder if it's like a thing with the high fantasy burnout kind of a situation too, right? Because we had like Game of Thrones was like
Yeah.
huge, like a juggernaut of a show. And then, we have right after that, we thought Wheel of Time was going to do the same thing that Game of Thrones is going to do, right? Which is on
Okay.
Amazon Prime. Because Wheel of Time is huge. Like we're talking like massive book following and stuff like that. And it just kind of fell flat. It did not perform on the same level. It didn't perform on the same level as Game of Thrones, of Witcher, anything like that. And then you have high fantasy like The Foundation, same thing. Massively popular book by Isaac Asimov. Really, really good stuff, really good materials, but then the show falls flat.
Right.
And
But is this because of the material and burnout of the viewers and us like, okay, we're tired of this stuff, or is this the show quality not being up to par?
well, no,
Because
Wheel
Game
of
of
Time
Thrones started off
yeah,
really
it started off
good.
really good. Wheel of Time, actually, the production quality was there,
Okay.
and the acting was there. It was, I don't know, I just didn't want to invest in it the same way that I invested into Game of Thrones, I guess.
Were you with Game of Thrones from the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
I was not. I came in like way towards the end. So by then it was already it's very good. Just keep watching it. And I was like, oh well, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm gonna keep
I
watching
came
it.
into it from the beginning.
Okay.
I actually did try and read the books, and I could not.
This is funny to me considering that you can't make it through watching Lord of the Rings, but seasons of Game of Thrones you're in.
It's better.
That is a filthy lie. You cannot say that in a recorded device. I'm
I did
gonna
read.
have to bleep all this.
I did read most of the Lord of the Rings books. I was able to get through those. I was not able to get through Game of Thrones.
Also interesting.
Yeah,
Considering the books are so much walking.
The books, they've got nothing on George R. R. Martin and what he writes. He'll spend like 4 chapters describing the layout of the dining room table for one dinner service, and talk to you about like the castle's draft for 3 chapters.
Look, he's got to be spending all this time writing something.
Yeah, it's exhausting to read, but translates really well onto screen, and even better, because like I said, the series was good.
Yeah.
And Wheel of Time is a really good book series as well. I've read most of those books, and I just the show didn't capture the same thing. It wasn't bad. That's why it's kind of hard for me to explain like why I didn't like. I don't know if it's other people the same way. I started watching it, and it wasn't that it was like horrible production or
Pacing?
horrible acting. Pacing was a little bit slower.
Okay.
But yeah, I just gave up on it like right off the jump, and it's just like, I wasn't there for it. And then I wonder how well a Dragonlance would be received right now, right? Because we're coming off of Dungeons and Dragons not having done stellar, right? It did good. It did well, at least I think it did okay. It did moderately okay, but it did not like break the bank.
The movie.
Yeah, the movie. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. The movie didn't really, crash any super records or anything like that. It didn't make the splash that I think that they wanted it to make.
Yeah.
Hence, the reason why we're probably not going to see another one for a bit.
That actually pains me.
Which is very painful.
Because I loved Honor Among Thieves.
But yeah, like, so you have that, like, it's, it's a good movie for the people that are in, that want it, and that had a bar that wasn't too high, right? So we had set our expectations, and we came away with something that we did like.
Mm-hmm.
Dragonlance to the general population, who's going to care, right? Other than a very small subsection, because Dragonlance, like even my daughter didn't even recognize that Dragonlance was Dungeons and Dragons IP.
Maybe that's on purpose.
And maybe that is on purpose. But then it's like, okay, Dragonlance, that's going to take a lot of marketing, I think, to really be successful on a way of Game of Thrones.
That's what I say. So that's what's interesting. If there was HBO's Dragonlance, I feel like it would have legs before it even learned to walk. And if it's put out by Hasbro company or even Amazon, I mean, who really, it's getting harder to give it a chance then, where anything from HBO, at least they have a following,
Yeah,
an expectation of quality,
a slightly built-in audience.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can easily say like, oh, I would watch it, not knowing it's Dungeons and Dragons, because Dragonlance is just a name that sounds cool to me as someone who wants a new fantasy genre show to get into. and that is a void in my life right now.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm not everybody. And if you're going to dump in a ton of money to make, I mean, there's no way the visual effects for dragons are cheap.
No, yeah,
So,
it can't be. Yeah.
but if they look bad, it's not good. So you're this weird line where you have to dump in some money to make this look good. And the costume department and everything.
The dragons in Dungeons and Dragons 2000 didn't look great.
No,
they did look great at all. But that was still a good movie. So it can be done.
You can't keep saying these things into microphones in one episode. This is gonna be. I can't make shorts out of this at this point.
That's the
Swiss
real
cheese.
That's the real sequel that we're getting robbed of here, is seeing what happened to snails, and I will die on that hill.
They made a sequel to that movie.
Yeah, but not about snails.
Weird.
We're not following the main troop. We're following side villain characters. I need to know what happens to snails.
You know what would make me so happy? If they made an Honor Amongst Thieves sequel and Snails was in it.
And snails was
and they just tied it all together.
That, like, take my money. Let's go. Yeah. At this point, I'm just gonna have to do it myself. I'm gonna have to write a one-shot adventure that's a direct sequel to Dungeons and Dragons 2000. It's not gonna be a movie.
You're gonna play this at the table.
We're gonna play it at the table.
Okay.
We're gonna play it at the table.
Yeah. Why do I feel like this is going to be almost a stage play of like you and all your DMPCs and the rest of us are just like option A or B?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm going to railroad you guys all into resurrecting snails just so I can have some finality to my character wrap up for Dungeons and Dragons 2000.
You close the book on the campaign, you shed a tear.
Yeah. It's finally done. My work here is finished. But yeah. So Dragonlance, and like I said, as much as I would have liked to see it, I don't know if I think that it would be a success.
Joe believed.
I know he did. I know he did believe.
And I believe in Joe.
And I think it could be good, but I think that a lot of people would just look at it and be all like, what is this Wish Game of Thrones?
Yeah, they'd have to, the quality would have to be there. The
quality would have to be really good, and the marketing would have to be on point for that.
I think that's actually one of the biggest hurdles that these fantasy films and shows face nowadays, is because Game of Thrones set a bar, Lord of the Rings set a bar, all these, and that's ancient at this time, right? And look at Hobbit, as poorly received as it was for good reason. If you don't match at least what's come before, then you're garbage.
Yeah.
And you can't have a fantasy show without, especially one that focuses on dragons being in the world, without having them in there and them look good.
Yeah.
And if they don't, it's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't matter how good the writing is or how the performance of the stars, stuff like that. No one's going to give it a chance.
Yeah. But I think that anybody shopping around to buy Dungeons and Dragons IP from Hasbro right now isn't probably thinking about movies or TV.
Well, I mean, for the most part, they probably sold, a lot of that pot off anyway. And Tencent, though. Were you surprised at Tencent?
I wasn't surprised at Tencent.
I was a little bit surprised at Tencent.
No, I wasn't, because of the fact that Tencent wasn't a new name to me as far as like in the news.
Definitely not.
And they have a lot of money.
Yes.
And a lot of weight. So when I heard that it was Tencent, I was all like, I mean, if somebody's got the cash to throw it around on an IP that some would say is struggling to find its footing still, even after a boom, right, they would be the one that could do it.
The only thing where I was like, okay, you know what, this is actually pretty believable, was once the bit of story came out that was like, they wanted to purchase the IP for video games, and then Hasbro was like, nah, not unless you take the whole
Not
thing.
unless you take the whole
and they were like, oh, we will consider this then. And I was like, okay, I get it now. They wanted the game license, but they're gonna get the whole pie. Okay, that's where they had me.
And that's why I was saying, like, I think that the film stuff, so the live action media, the films, even like cartoons and stuff like that, I think that would kind of take a back seat right now as far as the IP is considered.
Sure.
When you're looking at it to something like games, right? Because look at Baldur's Gate and where it's
Oh
at.
my gosh. Yeah, of course a company would want to buy it right now. Look how well it's done.
Yeah,
You're right.
Look how well it's doing. Yeah, so the video games are like right up there on the forefront of everybody as far as like when you look at an IP and you look at success. And I think that's what lent credence to it in my eyes. Like you said, it's Tencent, video games, Baldur's Gate, all those things lined up for it to look like, yes, this is something that I can definitely see happening, because everybody wants that hot IP right now because Baldur's Gate is so good.
Yeah.
And think of how you could expand upon that. I mean, like,
years of development.
yeah. I mean, you've got Baldur's Gate right now. You've got another Baldur's Gate, which we know is coming inevitably, right? But like, there's so much that you could do with that formula that would just print money.
I'm so sad to say that I'm absolutely in the camp of I hope they do another Divinity next, even though I know that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, as much man, that's
I want
a tough
Divinity
one.
3 and then another Baldur's
Divinity
Gate.
3 would be like so good. I would really love to see Divinity. But then on the other hand, if I could will a video game into existence right now, right? It would be essentially Baldur's Gate, but not Baldur's Gate. It would be Spelljammers, Githyanki oriented, using the systems of Baldur's Gate 3.
Okay.
So just take all the systems that are existing in there, which is perfectly fine. So like all the current existing systems, expand on it more with even more classes and subclasses, refine it, and then set this stuff in Spelljammers.
I was gonna say, do you think we could get a Baldur's Gate 4 that takes place in Wild Space?
I would spend so much money. I would pre-order that right now. Give me early access 3 years in advance.
Is this like ship controls and stuff like that? Like, how does this work for
I think
CRPG?
that we could, yeah. I think you could put some ship stuff in there, like that would happen, like so moving in between acts, or like, you know, like not even acts. I mean, you could split the acts up into like 5 little subsections and moving in between Wild Space, and you could have some ship-to-ship combat. They'd have enough time to develop something like that. And your ship could be your home base. When you go to camp, you're going to your ship. Like, there would be so much really cool stuff that you could do with this. And I love Spelljammer. So, like, just expanding on the whole Githyanki lore and going into space and having all these new playable races. Like, if I could will any game into existence right now, that would be it.
I love this. There's no way it's going to happen.
No, it's so sad. It's so sad because it's like, I want to play it so bad, and the likelihood of it happening is...
We're going to be lucky if the next game starts in Waterdeep.
yeah, no. It's way too niche.
Could be cool.
Yeah, it's way too niche for what I want. But man, if I could, that would be something.
That would be rad.
That would be rad. But yeah, like you said, as much as I would love another Baldur's Gate, a Divinity would be really high on the list because... Man, I love Divinity.
Yep.
Those are some great games. And Divinity 2 was just art.
The action point economy made for a very fun system. Granted, this is Dungeons & Dragons, the video game, and it's very close. At least it is probably as fun of a way as it could be translated to a video game from tabletop.
Yeah.
I think it's rock solid. So the Divinity having its own system, while still similar, funny enough, has its own like flair and fun that you don't get from Baldur's Gate necessarily.
Yeah.
And what's funny is all the people that have come out now and that are like, oh, Baldur's Gate was so good, we want to go back and play Divinity. And they're just getting their butts kicked.
Oh yeah, they're
the harder game.
Slaughtered because Divinity 2 is not a very forgiving game.
Which is funny because I don't remember it being that difficult, but I guess it was.
Oh, it was hard. Yeah.
Just rose-colored glasses or whatever.
Yeah, it was difficult, and there was many times where we wiped in Divinity from just stupid decisions or making very like small changes in gameplay that ended up in just like snowballing into us just getting completely slaughtered. Happened way more to us in Divinity than it ever happened in our current playthrough.
It's rare for us to die in Baldur's Gate, that's for sure. Yeah. But Divinity, I just remember everything always being on fire.
Oh yeah, no, there was fire everywhere. Yeah, there was always something on fire, and like legitimately always accidental fights. They just you would fight everything everywhere all the time.
Oh yes, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it definitely is it's a bit more punishing of a game. But really good stuff. And Baldur's Gate, man, has there been a more successful game like in the last year and that has gotten as much traction as Baldur's Gate 3 has gotten?
I mean, it pushed Xbox and Microsoft to bend a rule,
to make real big decisions that they were all like hard and fast on before. Yeah. And they're all like, we have to make a concession because we're losing money here because this IP is so powerful and such a juggernaut.
It's not going to launch day one Xbox. Well, you guys got to get the thing fixed and then bring it over eventually. It's not a big deal. What are we going to miss out on? Who's going to buy this game?
Who's going to buy this game?
Game of the year, you say. Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, why would Tencent not want that?
Right.
Why would any company that is shopping around for an IP not want that level of success baked in?
My worry is that they don't understand that it's not Dungeons and Dragons. As someone who loves Dungeons and Dragons, making the sale, it's as much as it is Larian Studios.
Yeah.
Because their Divinity was amazing. This is amazing. I'm not surprised this is amazing because they made it and they put time and effort and care for it. How many Dungeons and Dragons games? We've talked about these recently, the other Dungeons and Dragons games. How many of those were massive successes?
Yeah. Not so
Name
great.
one other.
Yeah. Not so great.
So, sure, it's a hot IP potentially. There's good stuff here. Lots to pull from. I mean, like, my gosh, could you imagine if Capcom, out of my butt, made a Ravenloft game and it was horror themed?
That would be
something. That could be cool. But I don't know. Maybe it won't be.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's not just video games. So the IP in general, video games is, like I said, the hot button item right now, but you have everything else, right? We've got the actual, like you said, the 50th anniversary coming up for the actual game itself.
Yes.
They stand to make a decent amount of money this year just on, new book sales alone and new content sales.
I mean, you'll probably have new players coming in that have been waiting to jump in because the new version was coming out. And then you're going to have absolutely all the old players wanting the updated version of the rules.
Yeah.
And, I always come back to this, but do we know yet if the final season of Stranger Things is coming out this year?
I think it is this year. Yeah. I think it is. Yeah. Which is another push for Dungeons and Dragons.
It's another push.
More marketing. Vecna's back up front again.
Back, baby.
Yeah. So Vecna's going to be back at the forefront of everybody's, television sets. And
we have the Vecna campaign this year, right?
Yeah. And then we have, as I was about to say, we also have the actual Vecna stuff coming from them.
That's
because
big.
they realize the connection has to be there, right? So why not bake that in? Like that's
smart.
They're doing that because of Stranger Things. Like, we probably would not be seeing this resurgence of Vecna or anything like that, at least not right now, and not the push that we're going to see if it wasn't for Stranger Things. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I think that that's the reason why we're getting that content, is because it's a name that's already out there and people are already seeing and hearing.
It's more than just the D&D nerds and the current fans that know the name.
Yeah. And it's also going to, this is going to be pushed to people that aren't even looking for Dungeons and Dragons, because people are going to be looking up, search engine optimization is a thing.
Yeah.
So when you go to Google and you're looking up Stranger Things, Vecna, you're going to see some Stranger Things stuff, and then you're going to see books from Dungeons and Dragons and Hasbro Wizards of the Coast. You're going to start seeing that stuff on there as well. So just the nature of them, getting this advertising from Netflix is going to bring all the searches up for their other stuff and put them back in the forefront of people's, brains, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we get too far away from video games, this came out, I saw this article actually this morning, that the funding squeeze and this is from wargamer.com, funding squeeze at D&D video game studio leads to layoffs. It looks like Hidden Path, the studio that was working on Dungeons & Dragons video game, has postponed a major RPG project and has laid off several staff. There we go. Another one.
Yeah.
And we're talking about these video games being potential, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Just cash cows.
Yeah.
And already, boop, what the heck?
Yep. Still trimming fat, I guess, where they can, and still trying to save money where they can. Yeah, it's such a weird place to be in right now, right?
Yeah.
Because this whole rumored thing that happened, we said in the beginning, they have not straight up said that it's not something that's going to happen. They chose their wording very specifically.
Right. And to be fair, maybe it's good to always have the door open, unless you're like, this is our franchise, we're never selling it. You're very proud of it and you don't. But as a company that we've seen is just, I don't know if they're hemorrhaging money or what the heck's happening over there on the business side of things.
It's not good. It can't be good. No, it doesn't seem good.
So I know they're putting out some like Indiana Jones toys right now that people are like obsessed with and stuff like that. It's a big company, lots of moving parts. And we're so focused on our little section of it that when we see moves like this, we're like, hey, if Dungeons & Dragons is a profitable section of your company, why are you laying off staff and why are you making these moves? And maybe they have to. I don't know. I'm not in the business world enough to really, like, I guess, see like the forest, right? I'm in the trees.
Yeah, yeah, you're in the trees of things, so to speak. But yeah, it would stand to reason that Dungeons and Dragons, as big of an IP as it is not hitting the milestones that probably the higher ups wanted to hit,
Right.
right? And because of that, they have to scaling things back, and you're basically forcing them to do these layoffs to try and save wherever they can, because that's usually how these larger businesses work. So
Yeah.
they have, their profit margins, and if they don't hit them, then immediately the higher ups in the company start to sever portions of it, because they're all like, well, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Why are we pouring more money into it?
Right. I have this is totally, it's going to be opinion based and nothing more, because we don't have any information to build upon, et cetera, et cetera. If Hasbro sells Dungeons and Dragons, right? The assumption here is that they're selling Wizards of the Coast with it, or is it Dungeons and Dragons the IP, and then Wizards would no longer control? How does that work potentially? And then part two of this is, let's say a Tencent or somebody sold off, let's say Wizards of the Coast, right, with Dungeons and Dragons. Where does Magic stay behind? Does Magic come with? Would this other company let Wizards keep majority control? How much control does Hasbro actually have on it right now, versus how much is Wizards making these choices? There's so many questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts there. Like it's kind of crazy. I would assume that it's, just the IP and nothing more, and that Magic is not touched.
And you think Wizards stays behind?
And then Wizards of the Coast essentially stays behind. Yeah.
What would that look like?
I don't know. That's the
You're talking about a
question there.
book coming out right now that Wizards of the Coast is writing and making, and they're years out in development for these things. If they stay behind, what is that?
Yeah, it's such a weird thing to even consider, because of the fact that there's so much of it is intrinsically tied together, right? So much of it, there's so many moving parts, and they're all so interlocked. It's hard to imagine you peeling off one portion of it without taking everything.
Right.
But then once you start to get to that everything bundle, the more you start adding in, the less likely it is that you're going to find somebody who wants to buy all that or can buy all of that.
Yeah, because unless they're selling Wizards as a whole, I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
But I fully understand that maybe the choice, that doesn't matter. I guess on a business side of things, maybe it's just easier or necessary to piece it off.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah. And my putting on my tinfoil hat for a second here too.
Please do.
And
I'm going to say something hot too.
I thought about this is, what if all this started because they wanted to gauge interest in possible buyers?
I wouldn't be surprised at all. That happens all the time, right?
Yeah. So this is a manufactured story, a plant story, if you will, not because they have a buyer, but because they want to be courted.
Gauge community reaction.
And gauge reaction
interested.
of larger businesses around, and see if there is any interest out there.
Right.
Like somebody pops their head up and be all like, yeah, we didn't know it was for sale, but if we had, we probably would have said something about it. We probably would have tried to buy it. And they're like, oh, really? Let's talk.
Yes, Mr. Iger, we would love to sell to Disney.
Yeah. It's like how much of, this is manufactured by them to begin with. I mean, it's a smart move to kind of put the information out there.
It depends if they're looking to sell, 100%.
If they're looking to sell, that's what I mean. Maybe they are looking to sell. And that
Right.
was the whole point, was to get this out here to see, without actually coming out and telling our fans, look, we're going to sell, and having that come back on you, the way to be all like, oh, we had nothing to do with this. What do you think about it though?
If I could bounce off your point in question and ask you one instead.
Oh yeah, you had a hot take. What is it?
Do you think it would be good of Hasbro to sell this, as a fan of Dungeons and Dragons? Because all the time we're bouncing back and forth of, why is Hasbro doing this? Why is Hasbro making them do this? Why is Hasbro the bad guy? In WotC, we trust. Hasbro, evil. You know what I mean? Do you want to see someone else be over Dungeons and Dragons?
So my gut reaction is, I would not like to see them sell.
Really?
Yeah. Because we've talked about this kind of in the past too, is that looking at the way other companies do things, and the way that other companies release things, and the way they deal with input from consumers and stuff like that, I think we've got it pretty good with them right now, as far as like the way that how transparent they are with a lot of things. Is it perfect? No. It's definitely not perfect, and it could be better, but I think it could be a lot worse
That's
if
where
the
I'm weird with
IP
it.
goes somewhere that doesn't care. Like if it goes to somebody that just doesn't care, or that cares only about a specific thing. So you go back to that whole like, well, if they have to sell the IP as a whole, right? So they have to sell everything as a whole, and it goes to somebody like Tencent, and they only care about the video game portion of this. What happens to everything else? It gets forgotten, it gets pushed to the wayside, and now we have issues with a part of the product that we enjoy,
Yeah.
right? That is now going to get less, you know, care put into it, I guess. And that would be my fear, is that somebody's going to buy it and we're going to see a decline in the way the fan base is treated and the way the IP is treated. So
Yeah.
I would think it would be not so great, depending on who they sold it to. It could be good, and it could be so much worse than it is right now.
Right. I'm very split on this, mostly because I don't trust Hasbro. It seems like it's getting worse every day. I was going to say week, but yeah, after today's news,
Yeah.
it seems like it's getting worse every day. And if everything were to level out and be fine, I'll live in complacency and be totally okay, right? No big deal. If the ship is sailing, let it continue on. But if things keep getting rockier, then it's like, okay, well, like, what's next? What's dropping next? Are we gonna start cutting books because we don't have enough writers? And oh, maybe they go back on the everything's hand drawn and real artists and stuff. Maybe they start cutting things for cost, and the adventures themselves are a little like fluffed, instead of like meticulously written, and the time isn't there. Especially with how many books they've been trying to put out. And I know they're taking a
Oh
step
man.
back now, but like as a community of gamers where most of our stories, one, take a year or more to run sometimes, a lot of the stories we make up ourselves, and you
Yeah,
can
you're
only put out
flooded
so
with
much
so many
content.
things. Yeah.
And then you've got the movie and the streaming service and the toys and all these little things. And I'm like, okay, I understand you need to make money as a company, but it would be my perfect world situation. I don't even think it could actually happen. Was if someone at WotC somehow, or an outside investor or whatever, if they were able to just separate and be Wizards of the Coast and not have Daddy Hasbro,
Not have them there.
and
Yeah.
just let them do their thing, and us consume it. Take our money, give it to them. They take our money, they pay their employees, they make more things. The cycle continues without the input of a big company that maybe doesn't have the best interest of Wizards of the Coast, in mind, because they have the best interest of Hasbro in mind at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's dream situation, because I don't know how that happens. I don't know if Wizards of the Coast as a company makes enough money to purchase themselves from them.
To
But
splinter off. Yeah.
maybe we hit a point where it saves them enough money to let it splinter off. We'll
Yeah.
see. Outside
That's that
investment, who
double-edged
knows,
sword of hemorrhaging enough money to where you can splinter off.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it'd be cool to like be a multi-billionaire like a Bezos or Musk or something like that, and be like, hey, I would like to purchase this company from you. And then you talk to them and they're like, we're good. Just keep doing your thing. I'll supply some money. I want some money back in return. We're good to go. I don't know. That's not going to happen. I'd like to see it though.
Yeah, and like I said, I just worry that somebody buys it that is
That's the problem.
not interested in the core of the IP. They're more interested in the things that are currently making money and how long you can keep that ship sailing.
But are we getting to the point where that is Hasbro?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It's been great for a while, but over the last year or two, it's been getting progressively less great. And every time we hear from, Jay Craw, Chris Perkins, the figures over there that we, associate with and care, what they say and everything, they're very good at like calming us down as the community, telling us what we want to hear. And I think that's because they're saying what they want to say and what they truly believe in. And then when they get the call from up the ladder, they're probably as disappointed as we are. And they're like, this is not going to go well. Do you know what you're telling us to do? And they're like, yeah, well, bottom dollar.
Yeah. Jump. I said jump.
I said jump. Right. And if that's how it's going with Hasbro, obviously I don't want to see it get worse, but
No.
could it get better? I mentioned Disney earlier, right? Do I think Disney's going to buy Dungeons & Dragons or Wizards of the Coast? No. Would they? Could they?
Could they?
What would that look like?
What would it look like? Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know either. There's potential there.
I mean, if you pitched that like, 3 years ago, I would say absolutely
No
not.
way.
Wouldn't happen. But with the way things are moving and the way companies are changing hands and things that are evolving, I can see it
I
happening.
can't say Disney's not interested in card gaming. Look at Lorcana.
Oh yeah, I know for sure.
I could see them own, and then them. Oh, now we own a tabletop game, and we're all about bringing families together. And now we've got this gaming license and tabletop and film ideas, and they've got the money to make it happen. This is blah, 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 the Disney magic at work or whatever, but not impossible.
No,
Books,
not impossible.
There's a lot there.
Likely,
but there's other companies too.
I don't know.
I'm just saying, I wanna ride like Dumbo versus the Red Dragon over at like Magic Kingdom or something. It could be pretty cool.
Dungeons and Dragons Land.
Oh yes, Animal Kingdom was supposed to have the fantasy area.
Yeah, that I am kind of disappointed that we never got dragons.
Welcome to Dragonlance.
Yeah, we never got the Dragon Lands. We got Pandora though.
Pretty cool.
There's dragons there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ekrons.
I was gonna say that's not a dragon.
It's a
They're
dragon.
not breathing
It's
fire.
kind of a dragon.
A worm, if anything. Anything else?
No, other than
Not till next week or
I
something.
guess, yeah, we're going to have to wait and see what the next big rumor is that drops, which the way things are going, we'll have more news on Monday, probably some news story, something dropping, another department that's getting moved, shifted, kicked out the door. I don't know.
Microsoft purchasing Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah, it's like, it's weird. Every time I open up my browser and I see the news window and I see Dungeons and Dragons or Hasbro in the news,
It's disappointing every
I have
time.
to brace myself. I'm like, okay, here we go. I take a deep breath, count back from 10. Let's read this story and see what it says.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the doom and gloom of
It's too real.
YouTube. I opened that up and I was like, oh, look, more graphs that are all shooting into the ground. I wonder what they're talking about. Okay. Yeah, but it's like I want to see some positive news.
It's never out there.
I want to see some positive news.
Let's be the light.
Yeah.
But if we can will it to happen, we'll be doing that this year. We're gonna try extra hard to will positivity into this franchise.
I am excited for this franchise for this year.
This year is huge.
This year is
I want to be excited.
huge. I am excited.
The whole thing, and it's just bummer after bummer. It feels like.
Yes, I mean that I am excited for what we're getting. I'm not excited for the news cycle because it seems like it's just they're just getting beat.
Positive. We got the new like 50th anniversary logo.
Yeah,
It was cool.
mm-hmm.
We did it.
Yeah, there's
Shining light.
There's something. There's a light. Yeah, there's a shining light at the end of the tunnel.
Yep. But we'll see next week, I guess. And we'll make sure you tune in every week, and we'll keep you updated. Eventually,
Good or bad.
This is a weekly show, so it's never released the day you probably found out about the information yourself. But we have opinions, so if you care about those at all, we'll be here and we'll be giving them. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But for now, I've been Tyler,
And I've been Richard.
and we've been True Strike.
Bye.
Hey, adventurers! Thanks again for joining us today. Please be sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. If there's any questions you'd like to write into the show, you can hit us up on Threads or Instagram. New episodes release every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening to True Strike.